Ludwig, thanks once again for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for, for the invitation.
Not a problem. And I'm
Pleasure
looking
as
forward
always.
to having a discussion with you about mind control with particular kind of the way you approach it through the fairy tales.
Yeah, so there's a zillion perspectives from which you can look at it. And as we have already touched upon fairy tales, I thought, okay, there's one general one that shows how or what the human mind is lured into in order to completely fall for the intentions of dark forces.
Hmm.
So, and there, a good fairy tale to show that is the Snowwhite, which starts with a queen who, I think she does some mending or stitching, and she
Hmm.
injures her finger, and some blood comes out, and then she wonders, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a daughter as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the windowsill. I think it was ebony. I'm not
Ebony,
sure.
yeah. Think so, yeah.
Ebony. And so the queen basically symbolizes the Divine Mother, the creator of everything.
Hmm.
And the colors white, black, and red symbolize the spiritual mind.
Okay.
So her injury shows that something happened which wasn't supposed to happen in the heavens.
Hmm.
And as a consequence of that, the Divine Mother created a spirit which can go into the realm of time and space and take on a physical form. And so Snow White herself is then born. She's a symbol of the spiritual mind, of the human spiritual mind, which consists, according to the Vedic concept of the Satchidananda, the bliss, being, and consciousness, is the three the three different aspects of the human spirit. Well, the color white that you have when you see snowflakes falling, that's a symbol for bliss and joy. So that's the ananda aspect, the bliss aspect. The red color is the being, which is basically love and confidence and self-confidence, which is our inner being made of. And the black is symbolizes the impenetrability of consciousness. So the unfathomability. Can you say that?
It's a good word. It's a big one, but yeah.
of consciousness, the eternity of consciousness, which is black. So that's the third aspect of the spirit. She comes into the world and the mother dies, which means when we are born in this world and no longer have the direct connection to God. That's basically, it's all these fairy tales where the mother dies. It symbolizes the human mind losing its connection to the divine, to its own true self, that we no longer truly know or experience who we are. That's the death of the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then comes inevitably in a fairy tale comes the evil stepmother, which is, I think she's the daughter of a king, so she's you could say an evil stepmother or an evil queen or an evil witch, whatever you want, which is basically a symbol for the ego, or for the ego and for the dark forces that come from ego. So she tries to kill Snow White on several occasions, which means that the ego really wants total rule, and it doesn't want the human spirit and its different aspects. the aspects of the spirit to love and have compassion, to forgive and be in peace and to be in bliss, because all this hinders the total rule of the ego. So the ego just wants to kill the spirit and have its own control and say. So she asked a hunter to go and kill her. And this hunter takes pity on her and lets her run away and kills a boar instead, which is that, well, it's basically with some grace we can escape the immediate control of the ego. And basically she's running through forests and whatever, and finally lands in a house of 7 dwarves. So the dwarves, the word dwarf means it's a minuscule version of our self. And being 7 refers to the 7 chakras, because they are focal points of our consciousness, or even of our full bliss being consciousness of our spiritual self at these points. And so we are given, or we have been given by the Creator, these chakras to help us regain our true self. They're just the tools to help us to regain. Like the heart chakra helps us to feel love and compassion, and the wisdom chakra helps us to discriminate properly between the transient and the eternal, the real and the unreal, and so on. So she lives with the dwarves. So that's this existence that we have. We may not have the direct connection to our true self, or not be our true self, but we still have been given these tools. And but eventually the evil queen finds out that she's still alive. So in the ego somehow realizes, okay, there is some spiritual awareness and being left. It never tries to stop killing it off. So she makes 3 attempts on her. The first one being giving her a beautiful robe and then offering her that she will bind her for the robe to sit properly. And then she doesn't stop and continues until Snowwhite loses her breath and drops like that. She leaves and thinks, okay, she's gone. And the dwarves come back and see that she looks like dead, and they remove the clothes, and she can breathe again. And then she says what happened, and then they warn her, well, she will not stop trying to kill you. You must be very careful. You must see what she's doing and be more careful. So this binding until she loses breath. So breathing symbolizes natural rhythm, the natural rhythm of life, the natural order of life. So the first thing that the ego does is trying to get us away from our own natural rhythms and create something that is so artificial that we lose our connection to our spirit because of that. So you can see that in a grand scale with a view to the forces who try to enslave mankind. They started industrialization and the technologization of this world, and they continue towards computerization and robotization and currently digitalization to make us into machines, so we completely lose our connection to the spirit.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And however, we can learn to live with this technological world if we keep our focus. The dwarves are able to revive her.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get to the point where we say, okay, this is the way the world has developed. We have all this technology. We have this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can keep a spiritual focus. It is possible. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to be aware of of our own ego, and then the reflection of our ego, which would be the dark forces in our world, which would always seek to exploit our ego to get us away from our own self, from our own spirit.
Yeah.
So the second attempt is, well, in between, she always goes to the mirror and said, "Who is the most beautiful?" So the ego seeks to create a perfect world.
Yeah.
Where that is, and that everybody only adores what the ego wants. And also the dark forces who try to enslave mankind, they have certain ideas and they want us to adore the kind of concept they have.
Mm-hmm.
And to think they are the greatest, they are the best. What can happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
which could only happen if we completely lose our spirit and our connection to our true self.
Yeah.
And whenever the true self is perceived, we can see that what comes from love, what comes from compassion, and these things are much more beautiful than anything the ego can do.
Mm-hmm.
So if the ego wants control, it has to keep killing these things. So the second thing is she goes and gives her a poisoned comb for her hair, and then she said, "Oh, let me comb your hair," and then she sticks it in, and the poison gets through, and she drops like that. And she thinks, okay, now she's dead. Goes to the mirror and so on. And the dwarves come back. Well, they are always working during the day. So then they come back, see her as if she's dead, and find the comb, remove it, and ask her what happened. And she says, well, there was this lady who sold combs, and then she tried them on my hair, and then they warn her, well, that was the evil queen. You have to be careful. You can't be so naive and so on. You must watch out and not let her do anything. So the comb, the hair symbolizes the things, and we too don't have that much, but
Elsewhere we do.
But hair symbolizes the thing that is beyond the body. So beyond ourselves, the thing that goes beyond is the spiritual, the spiritual realm. So hair symbolizes basically the spiritual world or the spiritual self. And a comb is any system that brings order into this. So any spiritual system, like the yogas from India and meditation and things like that, is like a comb. So a poison comb is if you bring selfish ideas or selfish aspects into a spiritual concept, which many religions do, which ideologies do, such as Marxism and things. And so if you have a too, like in Christianity, you have a too strong focus on being sinful and being guilty, that also disconnects us from our spiritual mind, from our spiritual self. So you have to be careful from that, to be really not entrenched in dogmas and things like that, but to be focused on real spiritual aspiration. So even with such religions and ideologies around us, we can learn, okay, We can learn to distinguish things and take out the valuable, like with Christianity, there are valuable things in there, and leave the things that are poisonous. So that doesn't finally kill off the spirit. So you can live in Christianity and have a perfect spiritual life. It's absolutely possible. I know a number of beautiful people in there. There's nothing wrong if you have the right focus, the right orientation.
Well, that comes back to what you're talking about here with the wisdom chakra and discernment,
Yeah,
really.
You always need that.
Yeah.
You always need. It's one of the 7, is this.
And the one I suspect there's so much work being done right now to confuse it with gaslighting people as well, so they find discernment difficult.
Yeah. Do you know the German Dr. Klinghardt?
Yes.
He's done a lot of work, and he's analyzed the radiation. I don't know if you should mention vaccination and the different things that are done to us, and they all have a specific
frequency
negative effect on the gland that is in our brain. What's in the medulla? No, what is the medulla gland?
The center of your brain.
Yeah, and at the center.
Pineal.
Yeah. That was it. Pineal gland.
Yeah.
Which is basically at the end of the wisdom chakra, is the pineal gland.
Yeah, and to me, that is your connection to all the higher realms as well.
Yeah, and they're doing everything to destroy that.
Yeah, right down to the just as an aside for the people listening right now, when they do a scan in your brain to see if you have a tumor or something, because that's calcified in so many people because of stuff in the water, fluoride, and because of all the fizzy drinks and everything, they can see whether it's slightly off center, which gives them an indication something's amiss. So that is so important. And if you look on the top of the Vatican, they'll have the big the pine cones. It's the same thing. They know how important this is, and yet they do everything they can to block that pathway, to damage it, to insult it.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, that's the wall we are up against.
Yeah.
So but then comes the 3rd, and she comes up with an apple which is poisoned. And then, again, Snowwhite falls for her. She doesn't see that there is evil intent. As most people don't see the evil intent in what is going on in the world. And eats from the apple and drops to the floor as if dead. And then again, and the queen thinks, okay, now she's dead. So good. And the Dwarves return and see what they can do. They don't find anything because it's in her mouth. They don't look in there. They don't find anything, and they can't do anything. So that of all the things is the worst that is happening. So an apple symbolizes the transience of life in the physical world. So how transient everything is, how short-lived everything here is. And the poisoning is that you spread and create or bring people to have materialistic values only. So you have them completely immerse into the material world.
Which is what all the advertising is about, and all the social media, it's all about that.
Yeah, it's basically the world's been like that for the last 50, 60 years since sexual revolution, and then everything else came. The sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and so on. So that's the apple that we've been eating collectively.
Yes.
And that is a much tougher strategy to overcome, to get back to a spiritual orientation, to get back to our spiritual self. Because the temptation from materialistic values is so strong that people completely immerse in it, and that the spiritual self is so dead. You speak to people and you can't even explain anything to them because they won't understand, because they are so dead on the spiritual level. That's the vast majority of people still. That comes from this materialism that they have spread. particularly in the Western world, since for the last like 6 decades. And so they can't do anything. They put her into a glass coffin, so they can still look at her because she's so beautiful. And as the story goes, eventually there is a prince coming and falls in love with her because she's so beautiful, and keeps asking the dwarves, and eventually saying, well, then take her. And he says, well, I'm the son of a king, and I will honor and so on as my dearest. And so they let him take her. So the son of the king symbolizes the awakening of conscience, the awakening, the search for reestablishing our own integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see that this materialistic world is going completely into chaos,
Mm-hmm.
first thing we need to do is restore our own integrity and to get our values in life right again, right? But that alone doesn't revive the spiritual self. So he has, I think there's different versions, but the original version was when servants come and take the coffin, and then they stumble and fall, and the coffin crashes to the ground, and Snowwhite wakes up, right? And the poison apple comes from her throat, comes out, she spits it out, and then she's alive again. So, which means that when the entire society, or almost the entire society, is in that condition of being spiritually dead,
Mm-hmm.
then life has to produce some things which disrupt our perfectly organized materialistic life.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a disruption. There have to be problems which we have seen coming over the last years, and it's probably going to intense even further. These disruptions that will no longer make the materialistic life concepts work.
Mm-hmm.
And that in the end happens in order to reawaken the spirit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of inevitable from a higher perspective, from a divine perspective. It has to happen. Whatever problems come, they have to happen because people need to wake up to who they really are, and that they are not this lowly form of only wanting this, wanting that, and being completely immersed in these materialistic concepts, and refine their true selves and their true value as spiritual beings. So that's the fairy tale of Snow White.
That's very interesting, because as you were going through that, I was listening to it and working how applicable that is to where we see things right now. So it was fascinating to listen to. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought you might like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very applicable to. I mean, if you look at basically what happened in the last 200 years with the industrialization and everything that came, and the way where they have taken religion to, and then particularly in the 20th century, post World War II, the materialism that was spread. It's all like in the fairy tale.
Yeah.
And it's all with they have the purpose to kill our spirit off, make us into machines.
Yeah, definitely.